Hey guys, this is Kirob speaking, and in today's little dev update we are going to cover 3 topics, and those would be current activities and why it took me so long to produce this little dev update. And then we are going into topic number 2, campaign and regions, and just a little talk about that. And then I'm going to show you what is done for the inline free engines. Alright, let's get right into it. So, topic number 1 and the current activities. Why has it taken so long for me to get you this little dev update? Simple answer to that is the game has been horribly broken the last 2 weeks, and you would be a cynic if you said that, oh, that's just a normal open beta, isn't it? No, even worse than that. It is so broken because we had to dig deep and destroy the basic fundamentals of the game in order to make room for the campaign, and then put all the pieces back together such that they make sense for campaign play. This meant that even I couldn't really start automation in the last 2 weeks, and that means that we now have a lot of things to do. And before things were broken, I also did a few other things, and we make sure that for the campaign we are properly prepared for the balancing which is going on. So, one thing we have to do new is the competitors for the markets. And in order to do competitors properly, we do need lots of new car bodies. And if you read the little update I posted on Steam, on the news there, you are aware of that we added quite a lot of car bodies. And I'm just going through those very quickly while I'm talking here. So we are aiming to get 1,700 cars as competitors across the years, across the regions, and that means that the testers will be very busy. But before we put them on the task of designing all those cars, we want to make sure that the game has a reasonable state of balance. And my god, those balance things were really old and not applicable anymore. So I went into the different progressions of the car stats, revamped those. Probably, like, how many stats are there in the game? It's like horrendous, 30 or something of them, like main car stats. And all of them basically are redone and make much more sense now. It's turned out to be the case that I didn't change them since their inception, which means that they were mostly bogus. And I'm really proud of the system I developed, considering that it worked so well, even with those horribly broken stat progressions. So better things are coming up, and that means, like, what does that change even mean? Well, it means that the demographics rate the cars in a more sensible fashion now. And also what had to change is how many of the car stats are calculated. For instance, I completely changed the way that practicality and utility are calculated. And for that, let me just load in a Lua error. Here we have a just quick made up, like, pony / muscle car. Big engine, but pretty basic in general. And looking the deal as well. And now if we go to markets, you see, well, there, first of all, there's a big focus now on pony for this car. But I have to point out, of course, that this is based on the old cars competitors. So they obviously still were designed for the old progression. And thus, you should take what you see here with a grain of salt. But anyway, what we want to take a look at here is the changes in, like, practicality now has a big factor of cargo volume. And if you have a car which has basically 50 liters of cargo space for your shopping and stuff, then that won't be a very useful car. Also, if you're a 2-seater, then it is not a very useful car. Or not a very practical car. If you only have 2 doors, that is not a very practical car. So these factors make a much more difference, which makes cars which really shouldn't be practical less practical. This car has a pretty decent cargo volume because it's so friggin' large. Maybe you have to look into how the cargo space box was laid out, but then you see utility. That is really low. Yes, it is very low because this car has only like 560 liters of cargo space. Seems like a lot, but for actual utility applications that won't suffice. So there's a big penalty in here now. And like many of these stats have new things in them. For instance, I think you got this pushed into open beta as well. Some prestige changes to the cars as well. Anyway, I started fiddling around with the demographics and differentiate them a bit more. So more extreme. For instance, now if you look here, the city budget category, we are in Gazmere right now, which has a footprint plus bonus. So, but even with this bonus of like, what is it, 2.9%, if I read this correctly here, if you look in the lower left, you can see that the footprint is at minus 17.1. So 17.1% of the score for this car is for being small now. It was, I think, at minus 7.1, so 10% less. So there's a much larger differentiation between the different categories now, and that certainly helps with balancing the game. And that then led me to see that, well, even though I rebalanced these, nothing really changed, and that was bad, and that was because of the original stat progressions. Anyway, not to bore you anymore with this, a lot of things have been rebalanced and changed for the better, and now I'm really looking forward to getting those 1,700 cars done to properly fill the markets for your playing pleasure in the campaign. And talking of the campaign, let's get into topic number 2. So yeah, the campaign, as you can see, it's fully unlocked and fully playable. Haha, ha. No, it isn't. The only thing you can do here is go to the Leicht campaign, which is the light campaign, and it is the pseudo campaign, and it is the really horribad campaign, which has very little to do with the final game, the actual campaign, but it will be a step in the right direction. We don't want people to confuse it with the proper Tycoon gameplay we have in mind. This is a first test. It is limited to these beautiful 3 regions you see here in perfect RGB colors, and we only need these 3 regions for now. These will be fictional regions, and that means nothing for the final design of the game. These 3 fictional regions are perfectly fine for illustrating game mechanics and balancing some of the game mechanics too. And we wanted to flesh those regions out a bit, and as you may remember, there is the region of Gazmere, which is a kind of US-like country. It's in many ways not that, but they are really into muscle cars and all that kind of stuff. Then we have Archana, which is the kind of little developing country, or a reasonably large developing country, which will in the campaign come from basically not existing on the map for automakers to really be an important market later on. And then we have Little Florinia, which is kind of a Mediterranean country, which is really green but also into sports cars. And they despise muscle cars. So just the place for me. Anyway, the Gazmean market obviously is the largest and the most developed right from the start in the campaign. We have very simple economic progression, but also we have a reasonable model already for simulating the various economic cycles of the countries. You are starting the game in 1946 and you play until 2020. And because there is no real sales model in the game yet, it will all be based on simple scoring. And the scoring is the competitiveness you already know from the market tabs. So that's a really simple way of gauging your success in the campaign. Then also, to give just a bit more character to these regions, we held a little flag design contest on our Facebook page, and I promised to give a shout out to the winners of the contest. And the first one would be Jesse Brown for his design of the Gazmere flag. Basically, I straight up took his design and made a nice version of it in InDesign. And then we have, I think he was from France, so let me try to pronounce this correctly, Gabriel Rigon, who designed the Fruinia flag. This is a slight variation on his original design. I think this works pretty well. And then we have good old Norman Vauxhall, also known as Andrea Pommes, and I really love your surname, sir, because that reminds me of fries. Pommes in German means fries. Anyway, then let's move on to inline-free engines. Inline-free engines have been added to the game, and right now we are assembling all the assets and putting the place and bits into the right places and animating the whole thing. This is based on the... Oh, there you see, nice little inline-free block. But wait a moment, this seems oddly dissimilar to what you know. The very observant observer would notice that the cylinder walls are much thicker and that there is a bit more of a realistic gap to the outer walls. And that is because this inline-free engine block and all the other assets for the inline-frees are based on the new updated Unreal Engine assets. What that means is that the inline-free is basically a almost inline 4, as you can see here. Much thinner walls, while the thickness out here was... Whoa! Okay, that doesn't look good. You wouldn't want to run that engine. As you can see, this design here looks much more realistic. And this is from the new UE4 assets for the game, and this means also that when we release the inline-free engines with this version of the game, or with the next big update, I mean, the inline-free engines won't be that much smaller than inline-4 engines, because they are based on the old assets. But once we are all in Unreal, that will mean that all engines are getting updated and based on these new assets. But, well, we're here for the inline-frees right now and not chitty-chatty. So let's see, we have not placed yet valves, but we are getting there. As I say, they still have to be placed and animated. And you obviously are wondering already, like, what is the smallest and largest engine you can make? And let me answer that. The smallest natural engine is 300cc, and if you want to go there, you can of course make it even smaller. So we end up at 200cc engine. Isn't that beautiful? So you can power your lawnmower if you take 2 of these or something. We have set... Oop, no turbo. Oof, I'm glad that didn't crash there, because there's definitely no turbocharger coming right now of the inline freeze. That is something for later on. But we do have the various fuel systems in already. And... well, that is probably the most sporty of fuel systems you can get on here. And the different injection systems also. So they are almost done. And let's see, how does it look on the exhaust side of things? Well, cast log is already in, and all... that's a nice race. Tubular exhaust. Probably taken straight from the V6 and rotated a bit. Makes life easy for the 3D modeler. But this is all coming together nicely. Inline frees are thus almost done, and the only thing missing is placement of the various moving parts and sounds. Because as you can hear, as always, sounds will be last. There's nothing. It's silent. Alright, so much for that. I hope you guys enjoyed, and see you next time.